3.5 trillion reconciliation budget package. So what's in this madness? Let's discuss it.
Look ahead, look astern, look the weather in the lee. Blow high, blow low, and so sail we. I see a wreck to windward and a lofty ship to thee, a-sailing down along the coast of High Barbary.
Democrats roll out $3.5 trillion budget to fulfill Biden's broad agenda. So President Joe Biden said, we're going to get a lot done. That's fantastic. As Senate Democrats begin drafting the details on the social and environmental bill that could yield transformative change, Senate Democrats on Tuesday announced that they struck a deal on a $3.5 trillion price tag for an infrastructure package to expand Medicare and strengthen social safety net programs. So it was $6 trillion, now it's $3.5, and it's going to go under more modifications, trust me. Skirt Republicans staunchly opposed to more federal spending, combined with a $579 billion bipartisan infrastructure deal. So the party line agreement would amount to about $4.1 trillion in fresh spending. It would be among the largest spending bills ever taken up by Congress as Democrats aim to weld their slim majorities and level the playing field within the economy. So I put together an executive summary, just 4 points, kind of what's going on here. So number one, the original bill, as I mentioned, was $6 trillion. It's been curtailed to 3.5, discussed in another video, and it's going to be modified even further. Number two, the Senate Democrats have reportedly agreed to the 3.5 trillion budget deal, but that will change. And number three, more importantly, the figure likely reflects the assumed gross cost of the spending and revenue reduction proposals that will be included in a forthcoming reconciliation bill. Number four, the necessary precondition for reconciliation bill is the passage of a budget resolution, which should inform but not fully emulate the public's understanding of what tax and spending congressional Democrats intend to enact into law. So those are the 4 points. Senate Budget Chair Mr. Bernie Sanders out of Vermont originally wanted that $6 trillion. He wanted it all. The supplemental infrastructure plan would be welcomed, he said, in the slimmed down agreement that has a better probably chance of passing and gaining all 50 necessary votes from Senate Democrats. He said this is the most significant piece of legislation passed since the Great Depression. That's bold, Bernie. And I'm delighted to be a part of it, he said, having helped put it together. Sanders told a bunch of reporters at one of those press gaggles on Tuesday night. So the wealthy and large corporations are going to start paying their fair share of taxes, he said, so that we can protect the working families of the country. Ooh, the working families of the country are going to end up paying. So not going to happen, Mr. Sanders. So what is a budget resolution? This is important to know. A budget resolution is a strictly congressional measure. It is not signed by the president and does not become law. That sets forth total levels of federal spending, tax revenues, for example, deficits and debt. Budget reconciliation first requires the passage of budget resolution, and by law, a budget resolution must contain certain budgetary information such as overall spending, tax, debt, deficit levels over the next several years. Further, to enable the consideration of a filibuster-proof reconciliation bills, a budget resolution must provide broad parameters to congressional committees to report legislation known as reconciliation instructions. So Senator Mark Warner, he's a leading moderate, claims he's a moderate, who helped shape the budget package, said the measure would be fully paid for with offsetting revenue. But of course, Mr. Warner provided no detail. Mark, we need some detail. How are you going to do that, man? It would be nice, Mark. So Biden has proposed, of course, financing the measure with higher taxes on the wealthy and corporations and beefing up the IRS's budget so it can collect more revenue. Absolutely. So the budget would include language calling for no tax increases on people making less, and they talked about this a while ago, than $400,000 a year, a Biden demand, or on small businesses as well, which are getting crushed right now. The provision was described by Democrat aide who requested an anonymity, of course, to discuss the negotiations. So, in February, Politico reported that 3 Democratic pillar operatives who helped start Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat out of New York, first campaign, they founded the No Excuse PAC. The PAC told supporters to run ads saying, that Muchin, for example, would be primaried if they don't do more to stand up to the Republicans. The PAC hasn't filed for any finance reports yet with the federal election commissions. So while the specific details of the reconciliation bill haven't been released, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer out of New York said the bill will expand Medicare coverage, which was mentioned. They got into specific details. They're going to include vision, dental, and hearing services. So the bill is expected to deliver on many of Biden's 2020 campaign promises, such as free community college, unbelievable, paid family leave, expanding the child tax credit, and helping family with child care costs. So the plan would also establish a 2022 fiscal year budget resolution to achieve 80% clean electricity and cut carbon emissions by 50% by 2030. 2030 is a big year. Remember that year. So unpacking the $3.5 trillion policy proposals, Senate Democrats have reportedly agreed to the top line numbers for their forthcoming reconciliation bill. It is also likely that many of the proposals will be drawn from proposals set forth in the presidential budget, although the final legislation will probably necessarily reflect congressional negotiations and policy priorities. So it is unclear, however, what is specifically meant by this figure. Is it a deficit effect? Is it a gross total of spending? Is it the amount of tax increases that must offset it? Reviewing the Biden administration's proposals, it is likely that the figure reflects the gross deficit effects. So the combined spending, tax expenditures, and revenue losses associated with major policies in the forthcoming reconciliation bill. And to the extent those gross costs are financed with tax increases, the offsetting the tax increases, gross deficit effects of the Biden administration's major policy proposals, the American Jobs Plan, and the American Families Plan. So combined, these two policy programs would cost in gross terms of $4.4 trillion over the next decade. These costs include direct spending, some revenue losses, and tax expenditures. So the Biden administration has also proposed more than $3.5 trillion in offsetting tax increases for a net deficit effect of these major policy proposals of about $800 billion over roughly 10 years. So based on these estimates, the tax increases could offset an equal amount in spending revenue losses of more than $3.5 trillion, which accords with the reported top line figure of the recent deal. So key members of the slim Democratic congressional majority, however, have already objected to the scope and scale of some of these policies, suggesting that the gross cost figure of $3.5 trillion is very much the upper limit of possible budget outcomes under this policy. So I want to leave you with this thought. The top 1% of Americans earn about 20% of all income in the United States, but they pay roughly nearly 40% of all federal income taxes. The Biden plan would put even more of the tax burden on the wealthy. So it's time for corporate America and the wealthiest 1% of Americans to just begin to pay their fair share, he said Wednesday in this speech to Congress. You know, this has been done before, but something I want you to consider is we had infrastructure deal under the Obama administration, didn't pan out. And what happens is these bills are put together and people take the money and they don't use it what it's supposed to be used for. So what should be considered is the wealthy people, a lot of people create jobs and companies, and I pay a hell of a lot of taxes over my life, a hell of a lot. And I made some pretty good money, and I make good money. But a lot of these people create jobs in companies, and then you tax the hell out of them, and they leave the state, they leave the country. So I think something also to consider is all the special interest groups, all the pork, all the lobbyists who take the money and don't do anything with it for all these social programs. And it goes right in the front door and out the back door. That's a major problem with our government, the Republicans and Democrats on both sides. And the people out there creating jobs and running companies and being entrepreneurs and capitalists and helping people and creating wealth, we get taxed more. So I'm all for paying my fair share, but enough is enough. And maybe we need to put some checks and balances on, and there's nothing you can do. They got an open checkbook, and all these special interests and lobbyists are cleaning up. They take the money, and they don't do what they're supposed to do with it. And that's going on too. And that's why we're in the mess we're in too. Well, I'm off my soapbox. So that's kind of an overview. The plan is going to change again. That's where it stands now, and it's going to be modified before it goes through. So that's it in a nutshell. Take care, be creative and kind. Ciao.